Alright, welcome back. Now, I got a new microphone here. Let me show it off a little bit. It's the Fifine. My last one was a little $20 mono one. This one was like an $80 one. So, we're testing that out today. It can actually... What's cool about this microphone is I can leave it far away from my face while I talk. The other one, it would only ever pick it up, even with all the sound stuff on max, if it was right here. And if I was far, it would start cutting out and not doing it right. And it pissed me off that it did that. We'll see. But I can adjust it. Like, I can make it so it's -5 decibels and -15. But, like, if I do that, you're going to suddenly hear a fan in the background. And so I try to find a balance. Hopefully this is good. I'm going to try to wrap this up fast so I don't, like, annoy you guys with a bunch of this stuff. But, other update is, I am going to get an audio mixer for this microphone. And eventually I'm going to be upgrading my camera soon, too. So we got 2 more upgrades, like, on the way. But yeah, other than that, I got my new microphone, and it's good. It's very good. I'm happy with it. It could actually go further back, but I do like how it can pick up my whispers and stuff. So yeah. Anyways, let's load up our game. Anyways, we're gonna start just a few feet back before that confrontation. Let's begin. If I am to win this war, it'll be as a beacon of light and not a monster. Pack's feathers ruffle up as he lets out a long-winded sigh. Pocketing the locket, he leads the horses away while Salir marches forward. Nadja stood idly as Salir approached her in the middle of the clearing. Her head held high, a sly smirk snaked its way across her maw. She reached out to offer a handshake to the Emperor. Salir darts his eyes back and forth from Nadja's eyes and her beefy paw. It was too easy to believe at this point, he thought to himself. He slowly reached out and accepted the handshake. He never let his guard down, not even once, but found himself tipping forward as the lioness forcefully snatches him by the forearm. His cold golden eyes locked with hers, and they accepted the challenge. He kept losing his focus as Nadja chuckled with a morbid glee. What could possibly be so amusing? Nadja softly cackled. Oh, nothing. I wasn't expecting the almighty dragon-blooded emperor to be so handsome. Salir was taken aback in disbelief at the sudden flirtation Nadja was giving him. Even with his knowledge about their tantalizing tactics, he still found himself not prepared for it. Already, Nadja was enjoying the baffled look on her foe's face. Ah, such a shame. That pretty little head of yours will be on a pike soon after this is done. She purred and cackled and reached down to pluck a stray hair from Salir's head. Salir winced and sighed once he took in her bitter words. He returned the compliment with his own before smirking, looking Nadja from her paws to her ears atop her head. That's one way to claim a trophy. I'm a plaque type of guy myself. Maybe I'll have one for your head in my studies once I'm home. Maybe even one for your rear as well. Nadja's eyes lit with amusement. Oh, you like my ass, do you? Nadja shifted her body to show off her busty rear, while her tail flickered about. Salir glimpsed at her rear, playing along with her banter. A devilish grin etched its way across Nadja's maw at how easily distracted the Emperor was. With a swift weave of her hips, she swung her powerful legs back into Salir's gut, shooting him 5 stories into the air. The Shurkerans roared in excitement while the Imperial troops watched in horror as their Emperor flew into the air. Nadja bathed in the dread of the Imperials held and jabbed it into their pride, pointing and laughing in savage glee. As Salir began to descend, Nadja readied herself and backflipped into the air, connecting her deadly feet to his chest. The might of her kick projected Salir back to his troops. With a glorious landing, she faced her men and boasted with her arms held wide, laughing heartedly. She soaked in the praise her men gave her. She spotted Magina in the crowd and blew her a kiss. Salir regained control before hitting the ground, his claws extended out, and dug into the dirt to slow himself down before lunging himself forward. Nadja was too distracted with her gloating to notice the men warning her of the Emperor's quick recovery. She turned around but was too late to counter the assault. Salir leapt and connected his fist to her muzzle. As Naja staggered, Salir hooked his arm under her ears and pulled her down. His ruthless fist whipped a flurry of punches into her gut. Anger swept over Naja as she shook off the surprise attack and began blocking Salir's attacks. She tried to flare him off her arm, but roared out in pain as he sunk his claws into her flesh. Regaining her footing, Naja gripped onto Salir and slammed him into the ground. Each time she clubbed him into the ground, small craters were left on impact. Salir loosened his grip on her arm and swung his body upward, slamming his boot to her maw. The force of the impact caused the monstrous lioness to stagger back. He quickly distances himself from her. Scruffled up, he growled and held himself in a ready position for her next attack. Naja took a knee while rubbing off her beating. She could feel the silent gaze of her men bear down on her, as well as Magina, now rushing to the front to see her mother. While wiping the blood from her nose, she growled, stewing in rage. Naja paced around the Emperor like a hungry predator, hunched over and ready to strike. A savage roar erupted from her before she lunged at him. Serpentining in all directions, she leapt into the air and drove her foot forward towards the Emperor. Salir hurled out of the way from the impending force of Naja's foot, the force alone embedding her leg knee-deep into the ground. He attempted to move in and jab her neck. He stumbles back in surprise as Naja kicks her leg out from the ground with lumps of rock and dirt jetting towards him. The Emperor attempted to dodge out of the way of the debris, but found the cunning lioness waiting on him. She sideswipes him off his feet with her lengthy legs, leaving him to fall on his back. Naja hops to her feet and grips the fallen Emperor by the ankles, heaving him over her head and slams him onto the ground. In a flurry of blurry movements, she relentlessly slams the Emperor flat against the ground. In a moment of desperation, Salir found an opening he needed while Naja brought him over her head for another slam. He jerked his left leg free and embedded it deep into her shoulder. Using her as footing, he swung back his right leg and kicked her squarely under the jaw. He took the opportunity from her dazed state to jump above her and elbow her directly in the center of her forehead. The force of the impact brought her to her knees. By the time Naja recovered, Salir uppercuts her and delivers a powerful kick to her chest. Naja braced herself across the ground on hands and knees, gasping for air. Salir panted heavily as he cracked his neck and glared down beside Naja with his claws extended and fangs bared. "Now you understand why I'm the Emperor? Stay down and I might just spare you." Under her panting body, a crooked grin spread across Naja's maw. Her tail snagged around Salir's ankle. With all of her strength, she tumbled over and used her momentum to fling him over her, slamming him face first into the ground. She pounced at him, rolling him to his back and pinned him down with her own weight. A sadistic snarl snuck into Naja's face as she saw the confidence in Salir's golden eyes start to fade. A flurry of punches impact across his face between every venomous word. "You stupid highborns. Always claiming the victories when you know you never earned it." Naja's eyes started to fog over with rage as she stopped seeing the Emperor between her punches, but instead all of the kings and queens she pledged herself to. Naja extended her claw and swung them down to the Emperor's neck. A savage snarl erupted from her as Salir held her wrist with all of his might. Tears started to build up as her eyes flooded with rage. "The world would be better off without your filth." Naja pulled herself back, baring her fangs as she plunged herself towards Salir's neck. Salir spotted her plan and quickly countered by headbutting her nose. The impact of the headbutt knocked Naja out of her raging haze. Hissing at the pain in her nose, she felt her weight shift as the Emperor's rolling her over onto her back. Salir quickly slammed his knee across her neck, attempted to pin her by her wrist. "And allow brutes like you to prey on the rest of the world?" The Lion Emperor forced more of his weight down onto the lioness's neck to choke her out. "I'd rather chop off my own tail before I see that." Keeping a deadlocked gaze at Naja, Salir failed to see her flexible legs arch forward and snare him by the neck. Keeping a deadlocked gaze at Naja, Salir failed to see her flexible legs arch forward and snare him by the neck. Using all of her core strength, Naja flings the Emperor off her neck and several feet away from her. Some of these angles and the way he's looking. Okay. Both lions stride to their feet, each pace around one another with a malevolent glares thrown to each side. The roar of the clansmen and the Imperial troops cheering for their leaders rumble the forest. The pulsating tension builds as each fighter waits for the next move. Nadja glares down at the highborn lion. The focus breaks as she feels a warm sensation dripping from her ear. She reaches over to find her own blood. An amused smile curled past her lips as she chuckled. I'm gonna enjoy every last second of this. Both lions stared off at each other before bursting forward, roaring at the top of their lungs as they collided once more. Hours flew by as the horrendous brawl went on. Both lions continued their skirmish, battering and countering each other's blows. The thunderous roars of their fellow men shook the ground beneath them. Salir attempted to jab a southpaw into Nadja's gut, but is swiftly flung away and coiled up in her blooded fur. With her prey in sight, Nadja swings her fist dead center into the Emperor's armored chest. Thung! The force of the impact hurled Salir a great distance away from Nadja. He landed on his feet, however, clutched his chest, gasping for air. The pure power of Nadja's attack disfigured his armor with a massive fist indent into it. Grunting in pain, the mighty lion grimaced while trying to get his armor off. To his dread, he felt the weight of his foe bear down on his shoulders. Nadja pulled at his shoulder and cooed. "Oh, too snug?" A toothy grin spread across her maw. "Allow me." The towering lioness pinned the Emperor down by his shoulder with only her right paw before sinking the claws of her left into his breastplate. And a disturbing melody of metal and leather crying out, Nadja tore open the entire front of Salir's armor. Nadja was absorbed in the miniature victory over the Emperor, but in her high, she failed to notice Salir swiftly taking strands of his chainmail. He whipped the chainmail across her face. Shards of armor plate were still latched onto the chainmail, adding a deep cut to Nadja's cheek. Salir staggered back, finally feeling the relief of his armor lifted from him. He rubbed his exposed chest to catch his breath, but Nadja wouldn't allow it. She dashed over and swung her elbow out, bashing it across Salir's muzzle like a hungry snake. She wraps her arm around his arm, where he held his makeshift whip. She used the weight of the momentum of her assault to fling the Emperor to his back. "I thought we agreed no weapons." She shook his wrist violently before he let his chainmail whip go. "Good boy." She hoisted him up by the wrist and dangled him to her eye level. Salir threw a weak glare over at her while panting painfully for air, hugging his ribs. Nadja's savage snarl slowly churned into a mischievous grin as she mused at the Emperor's exposed body. His bronze fur glimmered in the sun, covering over his impeccable muscles. Numberless scars were scattered all over his body, yet hardly hindered the value of his beauty. "Oh, what a vile thing to behold on a highborn! A body scarred up from this dreary war? I'm sure you must hate for others to see your precious fur all ruined, Nadja brushed her fingers across Salir's scars, both amused and amazed at how toned his muscles felt through his soft fur. I see more as a trophy collection from death." The Emperor threw an uppercut towards Nadja's maul, but found out he's far from her reach as she dangled him at arm's length. Then by all means, let me add this to your collection." She extends her claws out and with a savage roar cleaves her talons over the Emperor's abs. Her mischievous eyes held on his, eager to see the pain erupt from the highborn. He merely flinched at her attack. Puzzled, Nadja looked down to see her claws and found no blood, only clumps of fur clung to her talons. She looked at his abs and gawked, seeing no damage done to his flesh aside from his streaks of fur. What the? With the lioness baffled, the stoic lion Emperor gripped onto the arm she dangled him from and swung himself up. His feet sprung forward and bashed into her muzzle. She let him go and cupped her aching maw. He took advantage of the confused lioness and created distance from her. Naja snarled with bitter pain, staring down the Emperor. Chuckling softly to the baffled lioness, he ran his fingers across his fur, where she tried to tear into. Special blood, my dear. The Emperor threw a petty wink at Naja. I guess the folktales were true. You really do have dragon blood in you. There's always some truths to tell, I suppose, and I'm no exception. Makes better sense, at least. To a normal person, your head should have been caved in by now. Are you now realizing just how doomed you are? How this petty fight is a lost cause? Naja cackled with a cynical grin. Ha! No, not at all. I just have to stop playing with my food is all. Naja lunged forward, using the strength of all of her limbs to dash forward to Salir at full speed. Fine. Fall like the rest. Salir mapped out his attack. He readied himself for a lunge from her. He would use her own momentum against her and grapple her to the ground. He waited patiently for her to outstretch her mighty arms to do so. Naja's arms reached out for him, but she stopped dead in her tracks and snatched onto his wrist instead of sinking her fangs into his biceps. His skin was hard as rocks. Naja, however, was drunk with rage. Her carnivorous fangs pierced into the Emperor's flesh. Shocked at her bizarre tactics, Salir recoiled in pain as he started to bleed out. An agonizing roar erupted from him. The conflict continued into the night. Both Imperials and clansmen erupted with cheer every time the battle would fall to their side. Alright. I think this is a good point to wrap this one up to, because I think this subtly changes on to the next segment. So far that battle didn't go anywhere. They're just fighting forever. It makes me think, how long would the fight have been quicker? Well, of course it would have been quicker if they were using weapons, because you would just get a stab, and once you get a stab in, you're done. And when she's dangling, they could have been a stab. But to think of how long they're fighting fist to fist is actually kind of insane. I am out of time for right now. I need to take a momentary break to think about everything that's going on. I've been reading a lot, and I've been having some outside sounds. It's quiet now, but I had a few things that were just annoying me during this when I was trying to read, and I had to keep rereading because then my dogs would bark, and I'd have to stop, and I'd have to reread it because I don't want them to be barking in the background while I do this, and some other stuff that was bothering me. Blah blah blah. It doesn't really matter. Anyways, I'm going to take a momentary break here. This is going to be the end of this one. I hope you've been enjoying this series so far. This battle was insane, though. It's crazy how long they've been fighting for, and the fact that they're just continuously fighting, and there's no winner yet, and they both keep taking this one's winning, and the other one's winning, and the other one's winning. He's putting up a good fight against her, and she's doing pretty good too against him. I'm just curious where this fight ends up, because I still feel like nobody dies, but I don't know. But I am out of time for right now. I need to take a momentary break. I'm going to continue the next part of this here in a moment. But anyways, let me know what you think of this new microphone. No need to comment, but I really do enjoy comments though. So anytime you comment, you just know that I read it. But anyways, okay, I'm going to go. Thank you for watching.